before. Okay, now we'll come to chapter 4, which is acid-base saturation and pH. This is also connected to chapter 3, but it's all about calculations, and it's a very easy chapter. Let's start with the first section: hydronium ions and hydroxide ions. If you remember in chapter 1, we said water does not conduct electricity. In chapter 1, we said water does not conduct electricity. But actually, after a very accurate experiments, they concluded that water can conduct electricity, but very slightly. Very small amount of electricity can be conducted, which we can neglect it in some certain places or in some certain experiments. But in this section, in this chapter, now we have to be very careful about this one. Then here's the question: if water can conduct electricity, conducting electricity depends on the presence of ions, if you remember from chapter 1. وثمان گندمی كهرباء پشت ببوني آيون أبستت. پشت ببوني آيون أبستت. But if water does not have any ion, then how can it conduct electricity? If you haven't added anything, how can it conduct electricity? We will say there is a process which is called self-ionization of water. Self-ionization of water. What is self-ionization of water? Two water molecules. So inside a water sample, where there are a lot of water molecules, they will react 2 by 2, like 2 molecules at a time, will react together to produce hydronium and hydroxide ion by transfer of proton. How is that? For example, we have the 2 molecules of water, water and water, H2 and H2O, 2 H2O. One of them donates a proton, donates a hydrogen to the other one. Then one of them becomes H3O, the other one becomes OH. كواتا لو حالتها يكي كان أبي ب H3O يكي كان أبي ب OH. بهوتشيوا, this equation is called self-ionization water. It means that it will ionize among its own molecules. It will ionize among its own molecules to form H3O and OH. Boy, H3O is driska. This is called self-ionization of water. And when they found out about these ions, where they make H3O and OH, where they conduct electricity, they wanted to find the concentration, how much H3O and OH is produced. As we said, it's very little, it's very low. It's not that much. Because the ionization is very, very weak. The ionization is very, very weak. At 25 Celsius, the concentration of H3O in that water would be around 10 to the power minus 7. OH will be the same thing, 10 to the power minus 7. You don't have to look at the one, you don't have to always pronounce the one. I'm just saying 10 to the power minus 7. Why? Because H3O and OH must be the same, because it's water. It's not acidic, it's not basic. It shouldn't contain more H3O than OH, because it's just pure water. Okay, pure water. That's why in 25 or at 25 Celsius, this is important. Concentration of H3O is 10 to the power minus 7, concentration of OH is 10 to the power minus 7. You have to know this. You have to know it. أبي بيزاني كconcentration H3O لأنه pure water 10 to the power minus how to OH بهمان شوي. How do you can examine it? چونکە نابێت کەسیان زەڵم بە سەرکەسی تریانە ئەگەر ئاوی پیور بێ. Okay? Then they got this point where we have a constant number, Kw. It's constant. From its name, constant. Ionization constant of water. What is this ionization constant of water? If H3o and OH are multiplied by each other, they will always get the same number, which is Kw. And Kw, again, at 25 Celsius is 10 to the power of negative 14. Why? Because Kw is equal to H3o times OH. In water, pure water, what is concentration of H3o? 10 to the power minus 7. What is concentration of OH? 10 to the power minus 7. 10 to the power minus 7 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 7, then we'll get 10 to the power minus 14. You have to memorize this. So at 25 Celsius, always Kw is equal to 10 to the power minus 14. Always. Kw is equal to 10 to the power minus 14. But if you have listened very carefully, I have always exaggerating or like focusing, concentrating on the concentration. همو جاره چیه کمو؟ باسی تمپریچر کم که ابیل 25 سلسیوس سابه. ابیل 25 سلسیوس سابه. 25 سلسیوس چیه؟ 25 Celsius, where we call it room temperature. This is very important, especially in chapter 5, chapter 7. When it says room temperature, it means 25 Celsius. I got to know it. Okay. Why we are so focusing on temperature? Because if temperature increases, ionization of water increases. So in a higher temperature, water will form more ions. أو آیونی زیاتر دروسته که اگر بیتو گرمتر بید ل 25 سلسیوس. اگر کمیش بیتو بعکسه. کواته اگر آیونی زیادتر دروست کرد کواته آیونی زیادتر کاراتش کن کواته چی KW شیلید. کواته KWش زیاد. کواته KW زیاد. بوی KW بس بیکش زیاد که با تمپریچر زیاد که بوله وری آینایزیشن زیاد. پیویز نکم رقمانی تری چی بزنی. اما کلم تیبله. You don't have to memorize any other number other than 10 to the power negative 14. But this point is important. This year, a question was asked on this note. I'm self-perceived كاتب ولا I'm not. كأجر بيتو temperature, if temperature increases, we know Kw, ionization constant of water, will also increase. Any questions? Good. Now we can use H3O and OH concentration. And before that, everyone, from now on, whenever you see this bracket, it's very important. This bracket means molar concentration. So if anything is between those brackets, it means that the concentration of that thing, for example, H3O in between the bracket, it means concentration of H3O. OH between the brackets, concentration of OH. Okay? Anything between those brackets means molar concentration. Anything. All right. Now, let's look at if, depending on the concentration of H3O and OH, is the solution neutral or acidic or basic? First, if in a solution even if we put more things into the water. For example, we put some acid and some base, both of them. But in the final point, where concentration of H3O and OH are equal, and if they are equal, it will be 10 to the power minus 7. It means that H3O will be 10 to the power minus 7, OH will also be 10 to the power minus 7. If both of them are equal, then the solution, we call it neutral. It's not acidic, it's not basic. Kawata kurina. Agar betu concentrationi H3O yaksan bu concentrationi OH که هر دویش یعنی که هر یکی که 10 to the power minus how تگا یعنی او neutral او solution neutral. But if solutions in which H3O and OH, we have both of them, but H3O is bigger than OH, H3O دلالة چیه که؟ H3O indicates acidity. H3O دلالة acidity که. So if H3O is bigger than OH, then the solution is acidic. Or we said if H3O is 10 to the power minus 7, then it's neutral. What about if H3O is bigger than 10 to the power minus 7? Okay? If H3O is bigger than 10 to the power minus 7, then it's also acidic. Or, one more thing, if concentration of OH is smaller than 10 to the power minus 7. So if OH is small, it means that H3O is more. اگر OH کم تر بود لماینس حوت کواته او چه بردویتی چه زیاد کردوه او یعنی H3O زیاد کردوه. So always according to the changes, concentration of H3O is inversely proportional to the concentration of OH. OH زیاد که H3O کم که H3O زیاد که OH کم که. از سری من رسمه. اگر هاتو if H3O is bigger than 10 to the power minus 7, it's acidic. And OH is smaller than 10 to the power minus 7, it's acidic again. بوش هذا. لهمان كاتا. If OH is bigger than H3O, this time. رجع OH دور تربو. OH is bigger than 10 to the power minus 7. Or if H3O is smaller than 10 to the power of minus 7 molar, then it's also basic. Kato basic درجته. أو كويرة. Second, H3O is smaller than 10 to the power minus 7, but OH is bigger than 10 to the power minus 7, so it's basic. Questions asked, there were many times that questions were asked just using these terms. مثلا H3O كي أنا وتو الرقم كي جاري كلا أبوه سيركن H3O كلا حاول بشوك تربو يأخذ له حاول جورة تربو. But PO2 بزين SC كان basic. And everyone, please be careful. 10 to the power minus 5 is bigger than 10 to the power minus 7. Some students get confused or they forget about this during the exam. Not now, during the exam. Minus 5 go to the minus half. Because it's minus. Minus half shuka. Basha. كوادا ونه دیشتکا یکسان بون نیوترال H3O زورتر بو اسیدیک OH زورتر بو بیزی اما پوینتی موضوع که باشه کرنا بابين بزانين concentration H3OH شلون حسابك concentration H3OH شلون حسابك if you remember from chapter 2 in chapter 2 where we had where we said if something dissociates or ionizes we found the moles but now in here the same thing we need molarity as well molarity ايش معناه for example NaOH the coefficient is 1 so if it dissociates to sodium and OH then if this is 1 mole this is also 1 mole this is also 1 mole what about if we use molarity for example let's for calcium hydroxide same thing for molarity you can use it just like mole for example if calcium hydroxide is 0.4 molar. Let's say it's 0.4 molar. Then calcium is what? It's still 1. This is 1, but this is 2. So this one becomes also 0.4 molar. OH is 0.4 times 2. Then it's 0.8 molar. واتا اگر بمولار جيته بهمان شوي مولك حسابك for example HNO3 let's say HNO3 is 10 to the power of minus 3 molar then H3O is also 10 to the power of 3 molar then NO3 is also 10 to the power of 3 molar. Why? Because they all have the same coefficient. We'll solve more questions about that, don't worry about it. But it's just like chapter 2. بمشي chapter 2. And in this section, or in this chapter, let's say, this section is better. We calculate H3O and OH only for strong acids and strong bases, not for weak acids. Why? Not for weak acids or weak bases. Why? Because for example, yeah.
Because they don't dissociate completely.
Exactly. Because we don't know how much H3O or how much OH will be produced. Let's say we have HF, which is a weak acid, reacts with H2O, reversible, becomes H3O. For example, for HNO3, why am I so sure to say 10 to the power minus 3 molar of HNO3 will become 10 to the power minus 3 H3O? Why? Because if you remember, in chapter 3, we said HNO3 is a strong acid, so it will ionize completely. All of the HNO3 will become H3O. All of the HNO3 will become H3O. That's why if HNO3 is 10 to the power minus 7, H3O is also 10 to the power minus 7. وتمان لبرو HNO3. Stronga هر همو يبه به H3O. همو يبه. فاتا خوی نمینه تو همو به H3O. فاتا تو این concentration H3O دست کرد. But HF is a weak acid. We don't know how much of the weak acid will become ion and how much will it remain as HF. That's why we'll leave that one. We have to do it in another way. So we don't do calculations like this one. That's why all the calculations here are for strong acids and strong bases. Okay? Like this one. Let's say what is required. It says determine hydronium and hydroxide. It means that find concentration of H3O and concentration of OH for all of these. OH و H3O با منه بدو زرو. Now, if HCl, what is HCl? HCl is an acid. HCl chia. Acid. What do we get from acids? We get H3o. We get H3o. How? HCl reacts with H2O. It will produce H3O and Cl. What is the concentration of HCl? It's given. It's 10 to the power of -4 molar. What is the coefficient of HCl? 1. What is the coefficient of H3O? 1. So concentration of H3O is also 10 to the power of -4 molar. فهذا ايش 10 to the power -4. Using only this equation, now we got H3O, concentration of H3O, concentration. See between the brackets, I said concentration of H3O. Every time I name this, since we have the bracket, I have to say concentration of H3O. Equals to 10 to the power of -4 molar. 10 to the power -4 molar. But it's asking also for OH. It wants to know how much OH is left inside that water after we have added the acid. قلنا لي شكرا. acid اگر كنا تنو اوكو بس يعني وقت شنو OH تيامو چونك اوكو خوي OH كابوا. اسا كمي كردوا. بولا بري H3O ما تك. H3O زياده OH كماكا عكسيه كرون. How can we find that? Using KW. Then KW is equal to, now we have H3O. KW is equal to concentration of H3O times concentration of OH. We know KW, we know H3O. H3O is fine. What about KW? It's 10 to the power -40. Then concentration of OH is needed, which is equal to KW divided by concentration of H3O. همو جاره کرنا وایلیه که اگر بمعنی OH بدوزینو KW دابشی H3O. اگر بمعنی H3O بدوزینو KW دابشی OH. Now this equals to 10 to the power of -14 divided by 10 to the power of -4, and the result is 10 to the power of -10 molar. Ama concentration چی؟ OH.
Sir,
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
When we solve a solution like hydronium and hydroxide ion concentrations,
Okay.
we should consider at the room temperature, isn't it?
Always, always. All of the calculations in this chapter will be at room temperature. It will at 25 Celsius. Unless the question becomes a little bit more difficult, but it has to tell you the KW. It will tell you how much would be the KW. But for now, I haven't seen any question. All the questions are in the book. They are all at 25 Celsius. Okay? Do you have any questions regarding this calculation? Okay.
Thanks a lot, sir.
You're welcome. All right. Question 2 is just like question 1. Please try to solve by yourselves. Question 3 is also for you. It's just like question 4, which I'm going to solve it right now. Question 4, it's calcium hydroxide. It's calcium hydroxide. So calcium hydroxide is a strong base which dissociates into calcium and hydroxide, but it will be 2 hydroxide. Concentration of calcium hydroxide is given, which is 10 to the power negative 4 molar. Then what will be the concentration of OH? It will be 2 times 10 to the power of negative 4 molar. See? It will be 2 times 10 to the power negative 4. Then concentration of OH is now given. It's now found, which is equal to 2 times 10 to the power of negative 4 molar. If you want to find Kw, then Kw is equal to concentration of H3O times concentration of OH. Then what is needed? Concentration of H3O, because we know OH is known, Kw is also known. Then concentration of H3O is equal to Kw divided by concentration of OH. 10 to the power of negative 14, we know it, it's memorized, divided by concentration of OH is found 2 times 10 to the power of negative 4. Please, everyone, from now on, please try to learn the calculators, the normal calculators, not the big screen Casios. كنا فيهم ببن أو حاسبة عادية كان ببن. Always in those calculators, when you divide 10 to the power negative 14 by 2 times 10 to the power negative 4, please try to put brackets so that you don't make mistakes, okay? Always use brackets. All right, this one equals to 5 times, because I'm going to write it in scientific notation, so it will be 5 times 10 to the power of negative 11. والله أكاته يانزا شو كات 0. يقدر أما كرت يكا يقدر باش يدو كات 0.5 أو شتي شأن كات 10 to the power minus ده 0.5 كم كدوه ببينجو 10 to the power minus يانزا درجة. باشا اگر یه بحاسبه بکنه اشتانه تنکشن ابی اکسر باتن درجه اکسر اواد تنات. It's a little bit different. This is not in the book, but it's a very good question. It says, what is hydroxide ion concentration of 0.042 mole of 100 milliliters HCl4 solution? If you look at this question, molarity is not given. Molarity of the HCl4 is not given. Look at the previous questions. Look at here. Directly, molarity of HCl is given. Directly, molarity of HNO3 is given. But this one, mole is given. Let's write the equation. HCl4 plus H2O becomes H3O and ClO4. Okay? Now, this is an acid. So we will get H3O. But what is the OH? So first, you have to find H3O, concentration of H3O. Where do we go concentration of H3O? HCl4. So attack. First, concentration of HClO4 must be found. How can we find concentration of HClO4? Mole is given, volume is given, so step 1, molarity is equal to mole over volume. Molarity بدوزينه بچي مول لسر فوليوم مول كمان سنة mole is 0.042 mole. Volume is 0.100 milliliters, so it becomes 0.1 liters. So divided by 0.1 liters equals to 0.042 molar. هسه من دسكوت molarity H3o من دسكوت. Now molarity of H3o is 0.042 molar. Then H3o is also the same, 0.042 molar. H3o is aynı işte. By doing so, we get the concentration of H3o, which is 0.042 molar. Okay. Now let's find OH. How? Using Kw. Kw equals to concentration of H3O times concentration of OH. Now we have H3O, we have Kw, we can find OH. So concentration of OH equals to Kw divided by concentration of H3O, which is 10 to the power minus 14 divided by H3O is 0.042 molar, which is 2.4, I think, times 10 to the power negative 13. Just to be sure, let me just put it again in. Or by 0.042. Yes. So it's like 2.38 or 2.4. You can just round it. 2.38 times 10 to the power negative 13 molar, and that's the concentration of OH. Okay. The pH scale, we are going to study pH scale. Expressing acidity or basicity in terms of concentration of H3 and OH can be cumbersome. So if you look at the questions before, if I tell you find which solution just by giving you H3O and OH concentration, it's kind of difficult to directly answer and say that one is acidic, that one is basic, without looking at the compounds. Cumbersome means difficult. فهذا كلنا توزع قرصة يكسر مثلا H3OOH اللي بدأ سابق يكسب زاني أسيديان بيزا توزع ناخوشة يعني توزع هاتي أبي تاكو بيدي لي أكيدو بويا هاتون شتيكي تري عندنا because the values tend to be very small very أنا بتشوكن دانسينوار أساني. What is used instead of using only concentration of H3 and OH? pH. Where does pH come from? Power of hydrogen, or exponential of H. Everything can be, from all those things can be used. همين بكارن power hydrogen, power proton, power exponentially H. همين راسة. pH of a solution is defined as the negative of the common logarithm of hydrogen ion concentration. So actually, this definition is this. It says negative of common logarithm of what? Hydronium ion of H3O. So negative log of H3O is pH. You have studied pH. You have studied logarithm in 11th grade. Actually, log and 10 to the power of x, log and 10 are like two things that are opposite of each other. They cancel each other out. So log of 10 to the power of x is actually equals to x. Log the power x یەکسانە بە x چونکە لۆگ و دا پاوەری شتێک لەگەڵ دەکەی ئەڕوا لۆگ و دا دەمە عەکسیە باشە یەکتری کانسڵەکەن لێرەیە we must have this minus don't forget the minus how can we use this pH for example we know for neutral solution concentration of H3o is 10 to the power minus 7 then if we want to find pH minus log of H3o is minus log of 10 to the power minus 7 as I said the log and the 10 are cancelled the log and the 10 are cancelled so what do we get minus 7 which becomes positive 7 بمشوا زي plus 7 باشا we also have another scale which is called pOH which you haven't heard of until now you have only heard of pH but we also have pOH because pH is minus log of H3o then what if we change the H3o to OH it becomes pOH it has the same definition the same rule but instead of H3o we just use OH that's it nothing changes so if concentration of OH is 10 to the minus 7 then pOH is 7 just like the calculation before okay and of course pH and pOH are inversely proportional if pH is higher pOH they're exactly opposite of each other same scale but opposite numbers let's see how let's look at this table clarifies everything if a solution is neutral we said it before if a solution is neutral concentration of H3o and concentration of OH are equal which was 10 to the power minus 7 then if H3o then log of H3o and minus log of OH will also be the same they will both be equal to 7 هذا كان حاول قاعد شو H3o يكسانه ب OH قاعد لوجي H3o لوجي OH شرب يكسان من بيكتي but if the solution is acidic we explain this part if H3o is bigger than 7 if OH is smaller than 7 then pH would be all of you will know a pH lower than 7 is acidic pH لأخوار حوتو بتشيا acidic أزانين pH of 6 5 until 0 it's acidic acidica but pOH must be bigger than 7 if it's acidic I know it's kind of confusing that's why always try to convert something to pH always try to think of pH and then convert it to pOH for example if they ask acidity they tell you what happens to pH if acidity increases you say okay pH will decrease pH شيلت ضعبزه why because pH below 7 is acidic then if they ask what happens at the same time what happens to pOH so you will say if pH decreases then pOH must increase they're opposite of each other okay then if it's a base we know base pH is bigger than 7 لبيز زازانين pH لحو قورتلا هشت نوبر 4 أبي لحو قورتلا then pOH must be exactly opposite which is smaller than 7 okay and you know scales of you can write this down please scales of pH and pOH are between 0 and 14. اما با چنك ل 25 سلسیوس سکیل پی اچ و پی او اچ لبین چنك با چنك 0 با 14 سکیل پی اچ و پی او اچ لبین 0 با 14. Let's repeat the relation again. pH and H3O are inversely proportional. Logically. Let's say how. That's due to the minus log, of course. But logically, think about it. If, for example, you want to answer a question exam, this is a good way to answer the question. If acidity increase, what happens to H3O? Increase. Then if acidity increase and H3O increase, what happens to pH? Acidity increase, pH must decrease because pH below 7 must become acidic. The lower the pH, the more the acidic. That's why pH and H3O are inversely proportional. And we know H3O and OH are also inversely proportional. Okay? But pH and OH are directly proportional. Why? If OH increase, basicity increase. اگر OH زیاد که basicity زیاد که همش تکان دامن آوابله. چی زیاد که acidity زیاد که basicity دامن بدوان زیاد بالا. OH increase, basicity increase. If basicity increase, what happens to pH? Of course, increase. 7. Same thing can be said for POH. POH is inversely proportional with OH. Okay. And POH is also directly proportional with H3O. Why? Because by increasing H3O, POH must increase. Opposite of pH. Let's look at this scale for an easy understanding. Sodium scale can be as you can see, increasing acidity to the left. What happens to H3O? Increase. See? H3O زيادة. pH ليه؟ pH is lower than 7. pH لخوار حوته. حوت. فاش بين شوار سدية كسفر الله. كواته pH درجة. Bigger than 7. On the other side, if pH is bigger than 7, then POH is smaller than 7. دائما للرقم كرنا pH و POH عكسية. بيستي زياكا قاعدة بيستي زياكا pH برو شو الراح سيروحات. POH برو شو برو خوار حوتي. On the same scale, if you want to add POH, this is how you're going to add it. This is 14. This is 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay.
اگر pH increase به acidity و H3O increase به هر چیکار وایه
اگر pH چی لبت
increase به
pH زیاد که کرم چی زیاد که pH حتی کم به acidity زیاد که اگر pH برز بیتو برو چی روین برو بزیستی روین بعکسه باشه pH زیاد که یعنی برو بزیستی روین برو بزیستی روی چی لیه H3O کم که چون acidity کم بیتو OH زیاد که تگشتی
تعال اسمش
باشه گه and there is a relation between pH and POH, and that is pH plus POH. pH plus pOH is equal to 14. كورنا pH و pOH كوب كيلو مكاتة شواده سيريا مبكر عندنا كاتة شنو 14 11 plus 3 14 7 plus 7 14 10 plus 4 14 always like this. Where did this 14 come from? From this rule. How did this rule work? What is Kw? 10 to the power of minus 14 is equal to concentration of H3O times concentration of OH. حتى بقول له بنسميه رختك راعي كرشم. 10 to the power of minus 14 equals to concentration of H3O times concentration of OH. ها كورنا؟ أو ما نهبوا مروا لي Kw. أجر بيتو minus لوجي هرهم يورجلين. يعني لوجي أما لوجي أوا لوجي أوش ورجلين. minus log of 10 power minus 14 كاتا شوارده. Minus log of H3O, we know from the rule, minus log of H3O is pH. What happens to multiplication? During log, it becomes addition. قرنا ببيرولي هين لوغاريتم تشيا. أجر بيتو كرت مان هبل للوغا ككرد مان هو ببشي ببا addition. Log of multiplication becomes addition. Minus log of OH becomes POH. باش أور له هاتو. Of course, it's at 25 Celsius. أما حد هميلة شيء جا لابس بين Celsius. كواتا اللي كورنا أم تبلا جر مثلا بتبان تبديت حسنا باللوجيكالي تبقى لبتوقع بتبلا كله بربع. بس وأنا بزانا كي H3O زياكة يعني أسيد زياكة. أسيد زياكة pH دا بازه. pH دا بازي pOH برزبته. همش تكن عكس ده. تو بس بكلمة acidity basicity تتيجي. OH زياكة. OH زياكة يعني basic زياكة. basic زياكة يعني pH برزبته. pH برزبه pOH دا بازه. ماشي. كيس بسيارينيا. Any questions? دور باشا. هسه بسياري شان أسرح لكن. But mostly we just use pH. In very special situations, pOH will be given, or just if they want to just make the question a bit more difficult, they will use pOH. But generally, the most important one, the most common one used is pH. All right. Let's see the calculations. انجبها فيري calculation ببين. شون calculationi pH again. First, it says determine pH for the following solutions. pH بمعنى يبدو زيرو. What do we need for pH? H3O. The H3O is an acid. It will directly give us H3O. Molarity of HCl is given. So this is just like the previous questions in order to find H3O. Plus H2O becomes H3O and Cl. اها وەکو ئەوەی پێشووتر کۆنسنتریشنی HCl-ەکە یاوە کە 10 to the power minus 3 تۆ لە pH بدۆزەرە باشە pH چی مانەوە H3o مانەیە کەواتەوە H3o-شمان دۆزیەوە هەر 10 to the power minus 3 کەواتەوە of H3o is equal to 10 to the power minus 3 molar. چیە بدۆزینەوە find pH. Okay, pH is equal to minus log of concentration of H3o. The minus log of 10 to the power of minus 3. Without using calculator also, log and 10 will cancel each other. It will become minus 3, it will become 3. So pH of this solution, which is 10 to the minus 3 molar HCl, is 3. کەواتە چەندەکە کات؟ 3 ئەکات. Okay. C. This time, this one is NaOH. Please pay attention to this one very carefully. Then it becomes Na and OH. Then if concentration of NaOH is 10 or -4, then OH is also -4 molar. There are two ways to solve this type of question to find pH. بدون رگا کور نتوانیم pH ما بدوزیم. باشه. یکم first way. In order to find pH, what do we need? H3o داوای شی کردو تو pH بدوزاره. یعنی همون اینا که اولویه pH بدوزیم. pH بدوزیم. باشه. کاتب چی معنی H3o معنی؟ بوی جهرجین چیکن. How do we do? How are we going to solve this question? We have to find H3o. We have OH. We now know concentration of OH is equal to 10 to the power of -4. So concentration of H3o is equal to Kw divided by concentration of OH. So 10 to the power -14 divided by 10 to the power -4 equals to 10 to the power -10 molar. What did we get? Concentration of H3o. Kim underscore? H3o underscore. Basha? H3o underscore. Now that I have H3o, now I can find pH. pH is equal to minus log of H3o equals to minus log of 10 to the power of -10 equals to 10. أويك بسيار كنتي ما وصايقر OH من هبو يعني بيز بو تشيلكين أو تعين الشيء بيز بو OH ده تو مجبوري بيقوري بشي مجبوري بيقوري ب H3o. H3o دوزينوا pH كمان ده سكرت تو على OH 10 to the power -4 يعني هشتا برك H3o من معه أو برك H3o شنيكا. Then the amount of H3o is 10 to the power -10. Then pH is 10. As you can see, 10 is basic, so NaOH is also a base. Yes, so it's true.
ما وصل ل pH لصفر بوحد وثمان أسيدة أي باش ل POH عين شد لصفر بوحد يعني لشوارده بوحد
لا شوارده بوحد وتا سيري قارس كلا كم شيء لكردوا هيك صفر بوحد شيء أسيدة وانيا شوارده بوحد ل POH أسيدة بالان بوحد تريان بعكسه حود وشوارده ل pH بيزا بلام حود بو صفر بي او اتش انجا بيزا
دەست خۆش.
باش بقول سر قد ومش عادة تم لا حالة أنا بس دور كمان هي we only have two ways only when we have base and pH. When we talk about base and pH, we can solve it in two ways. But it's up to you which way you are going to use, which one is easier for you. You can use it, it doesn't matter. Both of them are actually easy. Let's look at the second way. So we have concentration of OH. Okay, we have concentration of OH, 10 to the power minus 4. Using concentration of OH, you can find POH, which is equal to minus log of OH. So it's minus log of 10 to the power minus 4. So it is 4. What is 4? POH. POH wara. Be very careful, everyone. Look at the compound, if it's acidic or basic. Sometimes students, they get concentration of OH and they directly put the OH, the 10 to the power minus 4 into minus log. When they get POH, they think of it as pH. They forget that it is POH. Bili ana chatoka POH dozi to nek pH. Bu agalle be chawlek bakare. Now, if we have pH, we have this one. You have POH, pH plus POH is equal to 14. So pH equals to 14 minus POH, which is 14 minus 4 equals to 10. Oh, does Imano? Iman kert? Oh man. كررت كرت بابلانوان POH من دوزيو دوایی به هوی POH رو هویتر من دوزیو باشه These are actually the same thing. Nothing is changed. Only instead of a straight number, instead of just a normal number, otherwise nothing is changed. So it says find pH of 6.7 times 10 to the power negative 4. So we have, pH is minus 1. And this is directly given. But minus log 6.how, as I said, please don't forget brackets. 6.7 times 10 to the power negative 4 equals to 3.17, I think. Let me just check it again. Negative log of 6.7 times 10 to the power of negative 4. Yes, 3.17. That's it. It's done. Harune. Okay. Again, this one, second question is also the same. That's why try to solve second one by ourselves. پرسیار سێمیشار عینە شتە خۆتان حەلیکەن بەس با پرسیاری چوارەم هەیە حەلکەین چوارەمیشمان حەل کردووە شێوازەکەی بەزار حەلەکەین. Question 4 is just like the fourth one of the previous practice. We have strontium hydroxide. So strontium hydroxide is actually strontium 2 hydroxide. So if concentration of strontium hydroxide is 2 times 10 to the power of -2, then this one is 2 times 2 times 10 to the power of -2, which is equal to 4 times 10 to the power of -2. طب أكاد تشوار كرتي 10 to the power of -2. هسه من اللي شو معناها here? What do we have here? Concentration of OH 4 times 10 to the power of -2 molar. Again, you can solve it in 2 ways. I'm going to solve the first way. If you want, you can solve the second way by itself. Here again, we have OH, we need pH. So pH needs H3o. That's why concentration of H3o equals to Kw divided by OH 10 to the power of -14 divided by 4 times 10 to the power of -2 is equal to 2.5 times 10 to the power of -13. Now we got H3o. If we have H3o, then it's okay. We just can find pH minus log H3o equals to minus log of 2.5 times 10 to the power of -13, and it's equal to 12.6.